There are moments in life when the smallest voice in the room speaks the truth everyone else is too busy or too afraid to hear. Moments wrapped in mystery and mercy that arrive without warning and mark a family forever. And this story begins on a quiet afternoon in a small American town where a 7-year-old girl named Lily looked up from her coloring book and told her mother she needed to go outside because something bright was standing on their roof. Something she could not explain but felt deep inside. Something she described with certainty as angels, waiting with calm faces and glowing shapes that shimmered like warm afternoon light on water. Her mother, Sarah, paused mid-step, unsure if Lily was sharing another imaginative vision like she often did. Yet something about the child's steady voice felt different that day, nothing playful or dramatic. Just simple truth spoken the way children speak when they have no reason to pretend. Sarah glanced out the window but saw only the familiar shingles and the stretch of sky that had begun to dim with heavy gray, clouds rolling in from the west. Clouds thick enough to veil the sun and cast a strange stillness over their backyard. Lily tugged her sleeve and whispered that the angels were waiting because something strong was coming, and they should stay close to the living room where the walls were thick. Sarah's heart tightened because Lily had never spoken of danger before, and though she tried to brush it off as imagination, she felt a quiet pulse of unease in her chest, a sense that the air itself had shifted. Just then her husband, Mark, came inside with a startled look because the wind had risen fast. Far too fast for an ordinary storm, and he said the weather radio had begun issuing reports of a rotating cell forming miles away. Lily stepped behind him with wide eyes and said the angels were leaning forward now, as if ready to cover the house. Mark and Sarah exchanged a fragile glance, unsure what to do with that kind of statement. Yet the atmosphere outside was turning eerie. The kind of eerie that stills birds and darkens the world before the sky breaks open. Sarah knelt to Lily's level and asked what exactly she saw, and the child pointed through the window with a trembling hand, saying 3 angels stood on the roof with faces that glowed like soft fire, wings curved like shields, and one of them seemed to beckon them inside while its expression conveyed both warning and peace. The wind roared louder, whipping branches sideways, and a sudden pressure settled on the house like the world had drawn in a breath. The sky grew greenish, the kind of green people never forget, because it is the color storms take when they intend to tear through everything in their path. Mark told them to get into the hallway, but Lily shook her head and insisted on staying in the living room because the angels had shown her that spot in her mind, a place where they would be safest. Sarah felt torn between a mother's fear and a mother's instinct, yet Lily's voice carried a clarity that anchored her steps. So she guided her daughter to the center of the room while Mark checked the windows, each gust shaking the glass as if invisible fists were pounding against it. Then the sound arrived. A low, distant rumble at first, then a monstrous howl that twisted through the neighborhood with growing violence. The unmistakable roar of a forming tornado sweeping across fields and roads, eating distance with terrifying speed. The sirens began wailing in town, but inside the house everything felt oddly quiet around Lily, as if the very air around her held its breath. She closed her eyes and whispered that the angels were spreading their wings now, wide and bright, forming a wall of light along the roofline. Light she could see even with her eyes shut. Light, she said, felt warm and steady, like hands placed gently on her shoulders. Mark crouched beside them as the house shook harder, the walls groaning under the force of the wind. Something heavy slammed against the siding outside, and Sarah felt her pulse race as the lights flickered. A sharp crack echoed through the yard, a tree fracturing under the storm's fury, and the howl of debris scraping against the house filled their ears. Lily kept whispering that the angels were standing firm, pushing back the darkness, telling her that everything would hold if they stayed close together. Sarah pulled Lily into her arms and felt the warmth of her daughter's breath on her neck, while Mark covered them with his body. Bracing as the storm reached its peak, For several minutes, the world sounded like it was being ripped apart, a deafening chaos of wind and impact and tearing earth. But inside the living room, the three of them remained pressed together in a pocket of stillness that felt impossible. Lily lifted her head once and said the angels were shining so brightly that the storm could not cross the boundary they had formed. And though Sarah could not see anything with her eyes, she felt a peace rise within her, like a quiet certainty that something beyond the natural world was holding the house. When the roar finally softened and the pressure in the air eased, Mark stood slowly and looked outside with disbelief. The storm had passed as quickly as it had arrived, leaving behind a trail of broken fences, uprooted trees, scattered debris, and rooftops torn open across the neighborhood. But their house stood untouched. Not a single shingle was missing. The yard looked as if the wind had stepped around it with deliberate care. Neighbors stumbled out of damaged homes, staring in stunned silence at the ruins around them, whispering that the path of the tornado had swerved at the last moment, bending around the very place where Lily had said the angels were standing. Mark and Sarah stepped outside, overwhelmed by the sight of devastation on all sides and the strange, untouched circle around their home. Lily pointed upward with calm conviction and said the angels were leaving now, folding their wings and rising into the brightening sky, their light fading like the last trace of sunrise. Mark followed her gaze, though he saw nothing but cloud patches drifting apart. Yet the hairs on his arms stood up as if acknowledging the possibility of unseen presence. Sarah knelt again, brushing Lily's hair behind her ear, and asked how she felt. Lily smiled softly and said the angels had done what they came to do, and that God had not forgotten them even for a moment. Days passed and neighbors kept returning to ask how their house had remained untouched. Some assuming luck, others whispering theories. But every time someone asked, Lily repeated the same quiet sentence with unshakable certainty, saying the angels on the roof had shielded them because God watches even when no one sees him. Mark and Sarah, once hesitant to speak of miracles, now felt humbled by what they had witnessed through their daughter's eyes. Humbled by the way divine intervention often chooses the smallest voice to carry the greatest truth. Their home became a place of gratitude, every meal, every morning light, every quiet evening carrying a new awareness of grace. And though life eventually returned to a steady rhythm, they never forgot the day their child saw angels standing firm against a storm meant to destroy everything in its path. They never forgot the peace that wrapped around them at the height of the tornado's rage, or the way Lily's calm voice cut through the fear with simple, unwavering faith. The house still stands today, a quiet witness to the moment heaven touched earth for a brief, breathtaking span of minutes, reminding them that God's protection often arrives before anyone knows they need it. And sometimes it arrives through the eyes of a child who sees what adults cannot. Welcome, dear friend. This is Faith Light Stories, where every story reminds us that God never leaves us. Please like, share, and subscribe. If this story stirred your heart, please join our community by subscribing to the channel, sharing this video with someone who needs hope today, and leaving a comment about a moment when you felt God's protection in your own life. Your story may be the light someone else is searching for.